Chapter 4. So you like it rough, do you? He slammed into me, eliciting a sharp wave of pain to mingle with my pleasure as I clutched the sides of the table. His fingers dug into my skin as he gripped my hips from behind, his grunts filling the dark, unfamiliar room. Do you ever take any of these men back to your place? No, they could be creeps, and then they would know where I live. So, you know that these men could be creeps, but yet you still have sex with them? Yes. Do you ever find this blatant disregard for your own well-being concerning? I know how to take care of myself. God, you're so fucking hot, he growled, thrusting into me even deeper, his pace harsh and animalistic. Sliding my hand down to cup my sex, my fingers rubbed the folds as he filled me and pressed me over the table, my nipples brushing against the fabric of my bra. The pressure inside curled and twisted, and my orgasm rushed forth, enveloping me in a silent release. I never shared my pleasure with these men. It was not for them. It was my own private secret. Tilting my head back, I stared into the mirror above the table, watching this stranger in a suit contort his face into something vile and livid as he tensed up and exploded into me with all the fervor of a man draining his own wounds. With a groan, he slid out and zipped up his pants while I bent down to pull up my own, shooting him a forced smile as I slipped past him and into the bathroom. Turning the light on, I leaned against the door, closing my eyes for a moment. Do you feel better now? A sharp voice hissed inside me as I looked into the mirror, but only vacant, dark eyes stared back. I no longer had answers. Whatever satisfaction I once gleaned from my sexual exploits had now begun to falter to a dull, throbbing ache. I couldn't avoid the truth any matter. I was dying. Primary cardiac sarcoma. Those 3 words cut me open like a knife, and there was no way to staunch the flow of blood. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't run from this anymore. So fitting, really, that I would have cancer of the heart. Hey, gorgeous, you all right in there? His voice jarred me from my thoughts, and I turned on the tap, my hands shaking as I splashed cold water over my face, washing off the lipstick that clung to my mouth like a dark blemish. Yep, I'll be out in a sec. Opening the door, I brushed past him and grabbed my purse from the bed. Well, thanks for the late afternoon pickup, he said with a grin. If you feel like doing this again sometime, I'll left my business card in your purse. I shot him a tight smile and made my way to the front door, closing it behind me. I wouldn't be calling him. I never called them. Stepping outside, I propelled myself down the street, my footsteps carrying out a frantic rhythm of heeled shoes against worn concrete. Darkness pushed through the city as the glow of streetlights sliced my skin into shadows. The murmur of cars slid past like the rush of an exhale as I walked, the wind washing away the debris that clung to me, the scent of a man I did not know, the anxiety that coiled within. I didn't walk with a destination in mind. I wasn't trying to get home. I was only trying to outpace my own thoughts, turning corners and allowing them to lead me down the stream of sidewalks, the steady rhythm of the city mocking the beat of my failing heart. Passing through the business section, the persistent hum slowed to a crawl, and I found myself in the residential area, streets that trickled into neighborhoods, a discovery of houses tucked away and untouched by daylight. Each home held a history engraved within its walls, windows tinted with the warmth of light, flickering images of bodies obscured by curtains, the breath of humanity enclosed between wood and glass, the story of people living. The quiet I found here was comforting, and it eased the agitated pulse of my heart. The gentle acceptance of the night clung to me like a shield, buffering me from the splintered pieces of myself, and the rush of my own discontent softened. For one brief moment, I could imagine what it would feel like to have lived a life full of something more than the space I occupied. The machine hummed above me. I had grown used to these sessions. Closing my eyes, I tried to visualize the radiation piercing through the tender layers of my heart and halting the growth inside. Brittle time, it was all I had left, and I clung to it with a desperation I'd never felt before, praying it wouldn't crumble in my grasping hands. This vulnerability was like delicate skin stretched over bone and tissue, and I feared that if I moved too quickly, it would tear, leaving nothing to hold me together. The overhead light turned on, signaling the end of the therapy, and I sat up, my limbs shaking and heavy. Grabbing my clothes, I quickly changed and exited the building, skirting past the receptionist with a nod. My phone buzzed incessantly within my purse as I walked through the parking lot, reminding me of all the deadlines at work I was evading, all the unavoidable questions I didn't have the strength to answer. All of it seemed so pointless now. The clients and staff meetings, the advertising sales and editorial budgets, the work that defined me, the six-figure income I didn't need anymore. What if I just resigned? Handed over my position to Lillian, the young and eager copy editor who had her whole life in front of her. Why was I clinging to a career that only brought meaning to a life still full of possibility? I had no more possibilities left. All I had were clawing questions, ripping at the fabric of myself, and a fear that stood beside me like a shadow. The inevitable weight of it all was crippling. What was I to do with these last fragile pieces of myself? I sat staring at the email. I must have read it 100 times over the past 2 years. The words I had memorized by heart. The reply I never had the courage to send. The door to my office opened and Sylvia poked her head in. Sorry to bother you, but you told me to remind you about an appointment scheduled for this afternoon? Oh, shit. I leaned back, running my fingers through my hair. Sylvia walked in and softly closed the door behind her. Resting against it, she regarded me with a look of concern. Are you okay? I'm fine. She fiddled with the bracelet on her wrist, glancing around the room nervously. I mean, you've just seemed really distracted lately, and I'm not the only person you've noticed. Stephen has mentioned it a few times. We're all a little concerned. I told you I'm fine. My words came out harsher than intended as I stood and grabbed my purse. I don't mean to pry, it's just that you haven't been yourself these past few weeks. Feeling cornered, I briskly strode to the door and held it open for her. I appreciate the concern, Sylvia, but it's really none of your business. A mottled blush spread across her cheeks as she stared up at me. Her eyes wide and full of a gentle openness, I suddenly found myself envying. Life had not crippled her yet. You're right, it's not. I'm sorry. I nodded curtly to her as she slid past me and back to her desk. And I won't be returning this afternoon, so please send over my drafts to Lillian and have her finalize the edits for this week. Of course. I could feel her eyes following me as I walked toward the elevator and pushed the green button, the sting of remorse tugging at me. Sylvia? Yes? She turned to me, the edges of her mouth quivering as if unsure of their direction. I gave her a tired smile. I didn't mean to snap at you just now. Don't worry about me, okay? Stepping into the elevator, the doors shut behind me with a whoosh, enclosing me in a tempered silence. My vulnerability a tight band stretched across my skin. Why do you feel like you always have to keep people at arm's length, Julia? Because it's easier that way. And what do you think will happen if you let someone in? I lose my power. And why is power so important to you? Because it's all I have. Stepping into the room of the support group, my eyes scanned the faces of people who stood in small cloistered circles, clutching white paper cups and chatting quietly. I had surprised myself by returning. This longing for solidarity and a desire to push past my comfort level was unfamiliar. I felt like a small child in a room full of adults who spoke in a language I couldn't decipher, but desperately wanted to understand. I spotted Quinn in the corner talking to another man. My eyes quickly skirted away, hoping he hadn't noticed me watching him, as a vague rush of warmth washed across my skin. My proposition from the week before lingered awkwardly within me, the memory tasting crass and ugly as my hands fumbled for a cup at the refreshment table, pouring myself some coffee from the dispenser. You're back. I turned around and found Quinn's deep brown eyes on me. Yeah, my voice wavered as I swept my arm across the room. I figured I'd give this thing one more shot. He nodded at the cup in my hand. You're not going to drink that, are you? I looked down at the watery brown liquid and grimaced. I was hoping this would be coffee. He chuckled. I think it's only supposed to be the idea of coffee. A smile slipped out as I set the cup on the table. Hey, I wanted to apologize for last week. Really? His eyes danced with the playfulness. I would have taken you for more of the bold, unapologetic type. I usually am. I looked away, my finger absent-mindedly tracing the smudges on the wooden folding table. I'm just trying to make things less awkward. Quinn raised his hands up in the air. No awkwardness here. In fact, I was quite flattered. I don't get propositioned by women very often, he said with a light-hearted grin. With me being unable to dress myself and all. A small laugh escaped me. Okay, now you just made me sound shallow. Are you shallow? His response caught me off guard. The look in his eyes, intense and probing. There it was again, that challenge. But this time it felt refreshing. There was something about him that made me want to loosen my armor. People began to move around us, taking their seats within the circle. Quinn gave me a nod and motioned toward a chair. Shall we? It looks like we're about to start. I sat down beside him as the energy in the room shifted from the buoyancy of casual banter to the heaviness of a reality we all shared. A somber silence settled among us as Susan took a seat and adjusted her glasses. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Who would like to open the circle? From the corner of my eye, I saw Quinn's hand go up. His brow furrowed as he leaned forward in his chair, clasping his hands tightly together. Well, I still haven't told my son about my cancer. His voice came out strained as he spoke, and a pang of sorrow hit me as understanding nods moved like a wave across the room. I wondered how many had children of their own, how many put on a brave face to soften the truth that clung to them like a stain they could not erase. I took in these faces, awash in their tide of their own private sorrow, and I saw a courage there, embedded in the act of loving something beyond yourself. The sharp sting of regret rose within as I realized it was a sacrifice I had never been willing to make. Voices rose and fell around me as the hours slowly passed, cocooned in a space fashioned from collective misfortune. Tangled sunlight pierced through the clouds like a fleeting reprieve and streamed through the windows as I sat there and listened to these people share their stories of love, loss, grief, and fear, while my own story sat locked tightly within the cage of my chest, daring me to release it. People began to trickle out the door as the meeting ended, and I joined them, stepping outside to find Quinn beside his bike, tucking a long lens camera into the folds of his saddlebag. Crossing my arms, I leaned against the wall beside him. Do you always ride that thing? He looked at me. I try to. Best way to get around, in my opinion. You sure you don't want to go for a ride? I'm actually headed to Mount Baker Bridge and to do a shoot. We're not going to get many more nice days like this. The truth saturated the edges of his words, coating them in a meaning that went far beyond the weather, daring me to push past the walls of my isolation, to shed the stagnant layers I had woven so carefully around myself. Stepping up to him, I touched the seat of his bike, running my hands across the soft leather. It is a nice day out, isn't it? Quinn bent his head down next to mine, wisps of hair falling into his eyes as he shot me a crooked smile. So what do you say? You want to go on a little adventure?